We found out that Ollie was profoundly deaf actually very soon after he was born. If you find out that your child is deaf to the extent that it probably has a lifelong impact on them, you suddenly realise that every time you held that child close to you or even talked to it before it was born, it didn't hear you. Parents of newborns say, "I love you." How will they ever say it back to me?
Deafness isn't selective in whom it affects. It might be genetic. It might be acquired after the child is born through an illness. It might be due to prematurity. Families come to us usually in a state of grief and of shock.
We were completely devastated, myself and my husband, and are just coming to terms with it.
When we found out that Siri had hearing loss, we were devastated. Both my wife and I are musicians.
We were told she was moderate severe, and then the next day we had hearing aids, and it was a massive roller coaster.
He was diagnosed quite late. Actually, for 3 years I was telling the doctors that Paul couldn't hear, and they were telling me he could. And he had 3 hearing tests, and they could never diagnose it properly.
Hearing loss is a neurological emergency. The ears are only the way in. It's a bit like a computer. So your brain is the hard drive. That's the bit that we need to get auditory information to. Your ears are actually only the keyboard. If we don't get in, ideally in the first 12 months, absolutely by 3.5, we are losing our window to grow an auditory brain.
Will my child go to a normal school? Will she have to go to a deaf school? What's her social group going to be like?
Listen, first we make it wet and then we go swish. Okay, first wet and then swish. Money. Here's your brush.
Thank you, my brush.
So first
wet
and
then swish. No.
a child with a hearing loss typically acquires language at half the rate of a child who has typical hearing. So it means that many, many children with a hearing loss will go to a school where they cannot actually understand what is being taught to them.
We made a decision, the only option to us if we wanted Ollie to use the language that we use was for him to have cochlear implants. And that's not something you do lightly.
Children who are fitted with technology absolutely need to learn how to make sense of the sound that they're hearing through that technology. And that's why auditory verbal therapy is so important.
All children who are deaf, who have hearing aids and implants, should be able to access AV therapy, but at the moment I think only a tiny minority must be. And I would really like Ruben to be able to talk one day. So without the therapy, I don't think he'd be able to do that.
Got my elephant.
Yeah.
And I've got some knits. But he needs a trunk. Children need to first learn that the sound they're hearing has meaning.
There.
Good job. There's his trunk.
In that.
Trunk? No.
Is that familiar?
No.
Okay, so that's new. Okay, great.
Our first session, we walked in and he hadn't said a word, and by the end of it he was saying something that resembled Play-Doh, and we were like, to someone else you wouldn't have been able to recognise this word was Play-Doh, but to us we were like...
We look at the entire journey that a child needs to make to get from having their technology to being a really competent listener, talker, advocate for themselves in the world, and we break that down into small steps.
He's had a few sessions with Louise, so we're just getting started really. We have quite a big team around Ruben anyway because he has some other additional needs as well. But for me, it's the type of therapy and the techniques they use that are so successful with children that really, really draws me in.
And the initial assessment, Rosanna responded to speech, which she'd never done, so that almost kick-started her into listening and trying to communicate.
Every moment of every day, be it at home, be it at nursery, be it in the car, whatever it is, has become a learning opportunity for Ollie.
He was diagnosed very early on because Chris and Claire had an indication that Alice's cause of hearing loss might be genetic, and so they tested him very young.
Alice could essentially laugh and growl.
It's an implant.
There are times when it is utterly terrifying. So I can remember when we took her to nursery for the first time, You know, she could barely say doll to want to play with someone else.
It's a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of
Particularly,
frustration, and there's plenty of tears shared.
it's been half full.
A story about my ears. When I was born, I was little, and then my parents, my mum and dad, and my brother Joseph kept me for 18 months, and something went very wrong. I could not hear a thing, not a single sound. When my parents said my name, I would not look at them. So they went to the doctors, and the doctor said she can't hear you. So what means she's deaf? Then when I was older, I got processors, and I could hear hip hip hooray for me.
Alice isn't unique. We're very proud of her, but in terms of her ability to listen, speak and communicate, she is just what an AV kid does.
Currently, we have 17 auditory verbal therapists in the UK, and we need to have about 300.
Different. Apollo had like 2 words when he was 3 years old, and now he's got hundreds of words, and he can actually understand what to tell him.
80% of the children that we work with go to mainstream school with age-appropriate language and learn to listen and talk and read and write alongside their typically hearing peers.
The pride of an AV parent is the first time that their child swears. Because you know you haven't taught that.
They've overheard it.
The child graduates when they've got the language that we think they had the potential to have anyway. Trunk.
She has 1/3 scale guitar that she likes to play. She has a keyboard. And music is a massive part of her life.
Oh, thank you!
Without the equipment on the side of his head, some people wouldn't even recognise that he's deaf, so he's made amazing progress.
We come up every 2 weeks and we love it, and she absolutely loves it. She loves coming here. We live in Kent, so it's quite a journey. It's all added costs because it is very expensive going on the train, and then we get a taxi. She has coordination and balance issues, so walking would take us a long time.
Whatever it is she was born to, do on this earth, the fact that she is deaf will never be a limiting factor in that.
She's indistinguishable from children her own age.
With auditory verbal therapy, hearing loss really doesn't need to be the barrier that it is for children in accessing society.